crafters, it's Darling Craftolate or Raven here. Today I have a Shappo inspired needle felting tutorial. As many of you know, Shappo is actually one of my favorite characters, so if you like him too, please give this video a thumbs up. If you want to check out any other of my Shappo inspired tutorials, I have them linked down in the description box. Well, let's get started. First, you're going to need your felting wool and optional some polyfill. The amount you'll need will just depend on how large you would like to make Shappo. For some details, I'm going to be trying something new. I'm going to be using some thicker felt, some embroidery thread and a needle, a red Sharpie, and some cylinder items to use as stencils. You'll also need a felting mat or pad, finger protectors, felting needles, and optional some cute findings. As always, you can find a complete list of all the tools and materials I used in the description box below. Begin by portioning out your polyfill into two sections, one larger for the head and one smaller for the body. Start felting them both into balls by continuously folding and rotating and poking until you have the amount of firmness you want. Try not to overfelt as your creation will become too stiff and vice versa. This could take a while, so just be patient with it. This is what they both look like. Now you want to lightly cover half of each ball with a thin layer of light pink and half with the dark pink. You really want the line to be definite and each of the sides to be even. They should look something like this. If you would like to add a finding, you could do it now. I used a needle with a few strands of embroidery thread and I put it through the bottom of the head and a little bit towards the back, as that's where I would like the finding to be. I slipped on the split ring and secured it by going through the head and the ring a few times, and then put it back through the head, tied off the thread, and trimmed away the excess. This next step, I'm doing it a little bit differently than I typically do. I'm going to be covering up any sparse areas while I'm using any extra wool to connect the head to the body. Where they come together, I worked on a bit of an angle so they will be a little bit more secure. Be sure not to bend your needle. I actually preferred doing this method than my typical one just because it used less wool, and that way I can conserve my materials. You want to work out and smooth your surface, but not all the way until everything else is added to Shappo. You should have something that looks like this. To make the arms and legs, you need to make 4 round cones, 2 in light pink and 2 in dark pink, with the wider side having the tail end of wool. Keep shaping the wool by folding it and poking it until the wool is matted and shaped. They should come out looking like this. To make the light pink ear, you want to make a chubby upside down triangle or cylinder with a loose end of wool at the narrow end. I also added extra wool to the top of the ear for the fold. You might have to add a little bit more wool until you get the shape that you want. Again, fold, poke, and rotate the wool as needed. Use your needle to add the full detail to the ear and make it more prominent. If you need to add more wool to improve the shape at the top of the ear, you can do that. This is sort of hard to explain, but I hope you can see everything on screen. Mine came out like this. The dark pink ear is much simpler. You're just going to do the exact same thing but without adding that fold to the top of the ear, and you just want to make the top a little bit wider. This is what that looks like. Now it's time to attach everything to Shappo. You can start by trimming off any excessive wool loose ends, and I actually just began doing this more of an angle and just kind of cutting upwards just to avoid any harsh lines of wool for when I attach it. Spread out the tail ends and loosely poke everything into place. I like to do this on a slight angle again, but make sure you're not bending your needle. Once you're happy with the placement, go ahead and work down all the wool and blend everything in. Again, just make sure everything is securely in place. Mine looks like this. Now you want to add some light pink spots to the dark portion of Shappo. I use this cylinder that I got from a pen as a stencil, but feel free to do these freehand. You want to use a few wool wisps and poke them into place. Adjust them as needed and clean up the edges. You want to add them all over. I actually avoided putting them where Shappo's face will be and where the back stitch will be. This is what that looks like. Now add Shappo's butt stitch by using some red wool wisps, and you want to roll it into a thin line. Poke one line of the X and keep folding the wool back onto itself until the stitch looks more prominent. Go ahead and add the other diagonal line to the X and it should come out looking like this. Now it's time to create Shappo's face, and you want to do this with some light cream wool. Keep adding wool and poking it so you can't see any of the pinks through it, and you want an oval shape with the bottom edges a little bit more square. This is the shape that I got. Now you want to add some black stitches around the face. I chose to just do 6 stitches, but some versions of Shappo have more, some have less. You do however many as you would like, and you want to use the same technique as you did for each of the line diagonals of the X. After you're done that, you want to go ahead and add on Shappo's eyes, and I used the same technique as I did for the spots, and I just used black wool instead, and I put them a little bit wider on his face because that's where he has them. And then you want to go ahead and add on that little smile, and I just use a tiny amount of black wool wisps and worked it back and forth in a smile shape. Finally, it's time to make the hat, and I decided to use some thicker felt for this detail, but if you would prefer, you can make this out of wool. It is completely up to you. I started by cutting out a portion of the black felt to judge out the size of the hat, and then went ahead and cut out a top hat shape. You can also just compare it to Shappo's ear and trim it as needed. Then you need to cut out a little square of white to add onto the hat. Go ahead and position the little white square a little bit to the right on the hat. And now we're going to start the M for master. I am using 2 strands of embroidery thread just doubled up, and I left a large tail end where I tied off the knot just to tie it off later. Doing this, I'm also going to be attaching the black hat to the white square at the same time. I went from the bottom of the M to the top and worked to the next point of the M from the back of the hat, if that makes sense. And then you kind of want to work backwards on the front of your work. This is really hard to explain, so I hope you can see it on screen. I also added that little extra detail to the end of the M. To attach the hat, you want to go through the ear and back through the back of the hat a few times. Cut the thread and tie the 2 ends together a few times and give it a trim. The knot should be hidden behind the hat. To add a little red dot to the hat, I just used a red Sharpie, but you can use wool or you could use thread. It's completely up to you. I just liked how this looked. Go ahead and do any final poking and cut away any loose ends to give your creation a nice polished look. Then you want to add on any additional findings and you're done. This is how my Shappo came out, and I absolutely love it. Such a cutie. I think it has to be one of my favorite needle felt creations I've made so far. I just love the proportions, the details, and just the overall look. And this is what I actually decided to add as a finding, which is this strap I made out of ribbon. And for the charms, I added a star, a key, a bead, and this made with love tag. I'm just so happy with how Shappo came out. I had so much fun, and I hope you guys did too. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you would give it a thumbs up. For more crafty goodness, be sure you're subscribed to my channel and hit that little bell icon if you would like a notification every time I upload. If you would like, you can follow me on my social media, and all my accounts are listed on the screen as well as linked down below. Thank you all so much again, and I'll see you guys all soon. Bye!